Today I'm going to show you some Dollar Tree DIYs using foam board. With a little bit of patience, you can make almost anything. Let's get started.
I'm gonna be myself, or I could be someone else. No one's stopping me now.
So to start off with this sign, I actually have two pieces of foam board right here. And what I'm going to do is just cut out a rectangular piece from it. I'm actually using the second foam board to help me draw out the straight line. So once I get it down, I'm just going to mark it with my pencil. The blades I'm using today are actually from the crafter square at Dollar Tree. So I'm going to apply one of the blades to the tool. And the easiest way I find to cut the foam board is to basically go over it twice. So the first time, like you see right here, I am going over it, basically scoring it, but make sure the blade is in the foam board. About halfway through, you really won't know how far in you are, but as long as it's inside of the foam board. Once you score it once, then the second time you can actually push all the way through. So now that I have it scored, I'm pushing all the way through with my blade, and just make sure you do it very slow so you can create the most straightest line that you can. And I'm going to use a Dollar Tree sanding block to straighten out the edges as good as I can. I used my tape measure to mark 1.5 inches on both sides. If you can see that, I'm not too sure if you can because I did it with a pencil. I want to make a border around this piece of foam board. So I am using now another piece of foam board to draw the straight lines. So this is my inspired piece that I found off of the Kirkland's website. So as you can see, I'm making the border right now, and then I'll also make that round border that surrounds the wording as well. Now that I have that 1.5 inch border all around marked with my pencil, I took 2 round items. You can get anything you want. I just made sure they were a little bit different in size. As you can see, I'm only marking the outside of this to give me that semicircle for each side of the sign, and this is that part that goes around the wording, so it surrounds the words, and I will do that on both sides. And you'll see me use the other pieces of foam board that I have to create straight lines. I'm connecting both of those semicircles with a piece of foam board and just using my pencil. When I cut out my first rectangular piece for the sign, the one I've been showing you this whole video, as you can see, it is to your left. I also cut out a second one. I'm working on the second one right here, and I did the exact same thing and marked off 1.5 inches all around to create that border. So now what I'm doing is cutting out that border, and it's gonna go on top of my sign to create that border from the Kirkland sign. The flower pot is a little bit bigger in size, so I already marked it, and that's what I used to create the larger semicircle around the cardboard ribbon circle, if that makes sense. You can see I did that already. Now I will just grab my foam board and create that straight line to give me that border. I have my sign right here at the bottom for you to see, and I did mark off with my pencil the round border on there as well. So now this piece that I'm using, this is the same piece I've been cutting out with. This is the same piece I used to cut the border that I applied already. Now I'm cutting out the round border to go on top of my sign where I marked off. So instead of just having a one-dimensional flat sign, I decided to add a border around it with another piece of foam board that you see, and then this round piece that I'm cutting out to go on top of my sign as well. It's just going to give it a better 3D effect and look like the sign from Kirkland's. Once I score it the first time, the second time, once I push all the blade through, I like to take it to the end of my table like this, and it's just easier to push my blade through, of course, because I don't want to scratch up my table. So I got that cut out, and look how good it came out. With a little bit of patience, you can make really anything. I think it's such a good idea to use foam board. So now I'm going to put all of it together so you can see how it looks. I got my flat sign, and now I have the border on the outer edges and then the round border to surround the words. This is where I realized the outer edge border is just a little bit too thick, and it's at 1.5 inches if you remember. So I'm going to go ahead and make it 1 inch instead of the 1.5. All right, and here you have it, the 1 inch border. It looks way better, and the inside round border fits better. I removed the flat bottom part of the sign because I want that to stay white, and the 2 border pieces that I cut out, just like the Kirkland sign, I'm going to stain them, and you'll be surprised. This actually can paint very well, so just make sure you use a bristled brush to make it look more like a wood grain, and you can use a brown paint that you have. I'm using antique wax, which is pretty good. I'm also dipping my brush in a little bit of water so it's not too dark. And now I'm going to glue them on. So now that the sign is ready, you can definitely add any wording that you want. I'm using a galvanized word that says thankful, and this came in a 3-pack from Dollar Tree. Also, I'm adding some berry picks from Dollar Tree. This came in a 6-pack from there. So I'm going to add those to each side and glue everything down. For the next one, I cut out a smaller piece to create a sconce. You can do 2. I just did 1 just to show you how easy you can make it look like a wooden sconce. So you don't need to do this part. I just did it just to see how it would come out. But I'm going to create some lines on here just to give it a more of a wooden look. Once I do this and paint it, you won't even be able to see them. But I'm going to use the back of my blade and just make some lines with it. I'm also going to use the blade and cut some lines on here too to make it look like a wooden grain. I don't want this to be a perfect rectangular square, so I'm using the end of my blade to kind of mark the top and cut out a little bit of pieces or make little dents just to give it more of that wooden look. And now I'm going to go over it with my antique wax and a little bit of water. And now I'm going to take some black paint and a smaller brush and make some black spots. And you can see I am filling in like the dented areas on the top and bottom and kind of like where I made those lines. This is where it really transitioned into looking like a piece of wood by me just adding a bunch of lines with the back of my brush. And I just pushed kind of hard in some areas and lighter in some other ones. And then I added more black and smeared it with my bigger bristled brush. So to finish up the piece of wood, I'm making little circles with the back of my brush and also making them a little bit different in size. You don't want them all to be the same, and just spreading them around. Now I'm going to add this small little jar that I picked up from Dollar Tree. I'm just going to remove the shells and the little cork at the top. And to add it on here, I picked up some magnets from Walmart. I'm going to stick some on the little jar and then also to the piece of foam board. I forgot to mention that I also drew a couple of lines, one at the bottom and one at the top, just with a little bit of black paint. So you can also most likely get away with just using one little tiny square of the magnet, and I ended up using two. The flowers are not going to knock it down or weigh it down whatsoever. For the next DIY, I am cutting 2 pieces of foam board, not quite half of one large one, but a little bit less than that. And just remember, I'm doing 2 of them. That way I can give it that kind of like that 3D look sign that I'm going for. So this is another Kirkland's inspired DIY. So I drew a 1-inch border all around to give it that look of the 3 shutters, just like the Kirkland sign. I am marking to the 6-inch, and then I will do 2 1-inch lines. Now that I have that drawn out, I am going to cut out those center pieces. So I'm going to mark it off with my pencil. That way I don't get confused while I'm cutting. So after scoring it once, this is actually my second time cutting it through. Okay, and here we have it. Just remember to kind of sand it a little bit on the inside and outside with that sanding block. So this is going to go on top of this one. And remember, I cut out the second one, so this is the second one. What I'm going to do to this one is make some shiplap lines just like the Kirkland's sign. And very easily, I'm just going to use a pencil, and then I will go over it with a Sharpie. For the shiplap lines, I am doing 1.5-inch increments. Okay, here's my shiplap piece right here, and now I'm going to hot glue down the trim on top. So I really like the way the double foam board gives that effect of it looking more expensive and high-end. If you know Dollar Tree, you know they have these wooden signs. I'm going to use this Harvest Wishes. Again, you can use any wording you want, and I'm going to paint it with some mineral chalk paint, and I'm just going to glue it on top of the sign. So this one was very easy and high-end looking. I really like this sign. For the last DIY today, I have 2 long rectangular pieces, And they're a little bit off in sizes as far as them matching, but it doesn't really matter because one of them is going to go at the top. Like I said, I'm going to double them up. Sorry, that's my puppy crying. I'm going to double them up so again it looks more realistic. So I have a 1.5 inch border marked around the edges. Now for the inside, to create the Kirkland's inspired DIY, and I'll show y'all that picture in a second, I'm doing 6.5 inches apart on the inside to create the 3 squares on the inside. Again, I'm using my foam board to create those straight lines. And now that I have the 3 squares, I'm just gonna bring out my metal plaque from Dollar Tree. It's gonna go in the center, and I'm just kind of checking to see how I'm gonna do that. So I have those lines separating the 3 squares, but what I need to do is make them 1 inch thick. So I just use my tape measure and then my foam board piece to make the straight line, and that will also be the border that I will leave and not cut out. So that part is all cut out. I'm going to place it on top of the other rectangular foam board piece because that's the way I'm going to glue it down. So now I need to cut out the X that is on top of the galvanized area in the center. What I'm using is just a scrap piece from the thankful sign from earlier, and I'm just going to cut out 2 pieces of that. So you want to cut those 2 pieces a little bit longer because they're going to be glued on the back side of this. So I'm going to turn it around and hot glue that. Once I'm done with this, I'm going to mark up all of this the same way I did that sconce, with my, like the back of my blade or the back of my brush, make some lines and cuts and some little like round holes or circles and dents to give it that wood look. After that, I painted everything with my antique wax and added some of that black paint like I did earlier on the sconce. Now I'm going to glue down the galvanized piece in the center and then glue down this border piece on top. I had so much fun creating these DIYs with y'all today. I hope you enjoyed them. The cutting of the foam board is a little bit tedious, I'm not gonna lie, but once I was doing it, I really started to enjoy it. It was a little satisfying in a way, kind of like those satisfying YouTube videos that you watch, like the cutting of the soaps and things like that. I really enjoyed it after trying it. It was really fun. So let me know if you give these a try. Thank you again, and I'll see y'all in the next video.
I'm gonna be myself, or I could be someone else. No one's stopping